Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire, and as always, I'm thankful you're here. Now today I'm sharing how to create a unique window shaker card. These cards are fun because they're unexpected, they have some fun features, and you can use a lot of different products you have on hand. You could use stamps, you could use stencils, pattern papers, foil, and more. I will be using a combination of different products today and showing you how to create 2 cards at once. I also have lots of tips for you. Now let's look at a completed card first so you can see where we're headed. Now when the card is closed, it looks like a typical shaker card with beautiful white heat embossed image on the acetate. However, when you open up the card, the shaker is actually a window to the inside of the card. So it really makes it special. It looks great on display. I wish you could see it in real life. Now on the inside, I did some inking and foiling, so I have some tips for that. And there's a place for your personal message. So let's get started. I've got a lot to share. I'm excited because today I get to use new colors from Gina Designs. She has 4 new colors and I'll use 2. First we have Petunia, then we have Marigold, Kelly Green, which is the perfect Christmas green, and Cadet Blue. Now these I'm really excited about because I look through my cardstock stash and I don't see these colors offered by other companies, so they're new and unique, and I'm very excited about them. I'm just putting the ink down onto white cardstock so you can see how it matches. Now this ink will be dark, but if you let it dry, it'll smooth out to give you the results that you see over there on the right. I really like how Gina's cardstocks match her ink. She also has ink cubes and she has reinkers. I will also be using the new Gina Designs Seasonal Patterns and Phrases Polyglaze. Now Polyglaze allows you to foil on the paper, and I will demonstrate it later. If you prefer not to foil, there is a Seasonal Patterns and Phrases stamp set that you can get and do a similar technique. So keep in mind that that plaid image on the stamp set is the same size as the plaid image on the Polyglaze, so you could replace the foiling with the stamp. I have my Misty stamping tool, and inside of it I have my Gina Double Background 2 grip mat. So this is a stamp on one side that has 2 different patterns, and then the other side is smooth. I use that smooth side as a grip mat inside of my Misty stamping tool. I'm placing my Polyglaze piece onto the grip mat, and I'm using an ink blending brush to apply the Cadet Blue ink over the Polyglaze. Now the Polyglaze is that kind of light gray print that you see there, and it will resist the ink you put on top. This will give us beautiful color, and then anywhere you see that light gray, we'll be able to foil on in a moment. If you don't have a foil machine, you could instead white heat emboss this or silver heat emboss this and do the inking on top of that. Now you can see here I can wipe away the excess ink from where you have that Polyglaze print, and this one is ready to foil. And I gotta say that Cadet Blue is so unique and so beautiful. Now we can do Petunia on another one. I will only be doing these 2 colors today, but you definitely could use the Marigold and Kelly Green that I showed you earlier in this video. Really, any colors would work. So I'm applying the Petunia ink over another piece of the Polyglaze, and then I will buff off the excess. And now this one is ready to foil also. I will be using my Gina Fuse foiling machine, which is a really easy way to foil. I'm turning this on to setting 3. Actually, I pushed it too many times and I'm turning it to setting 4, but that works also. I have Gina Fancy Foils here, which work really well with her Polyglaze. I know there are lots of different types of foils out there. ThermoWeb has many, but I can be certain the correct foil to use with Gina's Polyglaze are her fancy foils. There are others that work, but the fancy foils will always work. Now into the carrier sheet, I'm putting our Polyglaze piece that we did the inking over, and then I'm putting a piece of the fancy foil on top, pretty side up, and I'll feed it through the machine. This will slowly go through and heat it up and fuse that foil onto the Polyglaze. And again, there are many different foils you can use this. Many are from ThermoWeb. Gina's fancy foils are from ThermoWeb, but I am always certain her fancy foils work, and that's why I reach for those. Now look you just peel that off and look at that gorgeous foil that we have wherever you saw that Polyglaze light gray printing. So it's a fun tone on tone with shine. And that negative piece, we're going to keep that for a moment. I'll demonstrate with that. Now I have my other piece of Polyglaze where we did the Cadet Blue, and on top of that I'm putting a piece of powder blue foil. But you really could do any color of foil here. You could do silver, you could do gold, you could do some of the specialty sparkle ones that Gina has, but I was kind of going for a bit of a tone-on-tone look. Now this foil is much darker than the ink I put on it, but I love the two colors together. And look how perfect that foiling is. Next, I have some Gina K white Polyglaze. So this is a sheet that's covered with that Polyglaze. The entire thing is covered with Polyglaze. That means foil will stick to that entire thing. So what I'll do is put a piece of this behind one of our leftover foil pieces. So I'll put the Polyglaze into the carrier sheet, then our leftover foil, and run that through. Since that entire Polyglaze sheet is covered with the material you need to fuse with the foil, it will take all of that leftover foil and we'll end up with a reverse image of what we had before. That solid Polyglaze is a must-have because you get to use your leftover foil. So you can see how these are reverse of each other. Now I'm not going to use this piece in today's video, but I will save it for another. And then I can do the same thing with the other piece of leftover foil, the one that is Dusty Rose. Now I will demonstrate another way to use this Polyglaze later in this video when we do our sentiments, but for now we have two backgrounds that are inked with the foil. I'll be using those, and then these two leftover reverse ones I will save for the future. Now for the window on my card, I thought I would white heat emboss the Gina K Beautiful Things stamp set that you see on the right. I love these floral images, especially that one on the bottom left because it fills the front of a card nicely and it's proportioned just right for an A2 card. I also love the sentiments in it, although I won't be using those today. Next, I will need a piece of heat-resistant acetate. I get mine from Simon Says Stamp or Pink Fresh Studios. This one today is from Simon Says Stamp. I'm cutting two panels that are about 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. The other two pieces I can save for later. If you're going to heat emboss on acetate, you want to make sure that you have a heat-resistant acetate, or you can test whatever acetate you have by testing it out with a heat gun. Now, when you want to heat emboss on acetate, the key is a lot of anti-static powder tool. I put some onto a piece of white cardstock in the corner of my Misty, and I'm putting anti-static powder on the front and the back of my acetate, and I'm putting a very generous amount down. The more anti-static powder you use, the less of a mess you'll have. The reason I put a piece of cardstock underneath that acetate is because I didn't want the acetate to grip to the grip mat. I wanted it to come off easily. Now I stamped onto that using Gina K clear embossing ink, and then we can add our embossing powder. Now you could do gold glitter embossing powder, silver, whatever you want, but I love the look of bright white embossing on acetate. So I'm adding Gina K detail white embossing powder. Now another important tip when heat embossing on acetate is that you put the powder on and then you flick it pretty generously with your finger. You don't do this with paper, but with acetate you need to, so you can be sure that any excess powder that's stuck to there via static will come off. Once you're sure you're happy with the image, you can go ahead and heat up your heat gun. I let it heat up for about 30 seconds, and I keep it moving around over the acetate. You don't want to hold it in one spot too long because it may cause warping even if you have heat-resistant acetate. But as you can see, I have absolutely no problem heating this image and getting a nice embossed look on the acetate. Now I did that on both panels, and now I'm taking a dry cloth and wiping off that excess anti-static powder from the front and the back of the panels. And look how beautiful these are. These two panels will serve as the front of our window shaker card. So when you peek through the card, you'll see those foil plaids behind it. Next, we need to create the window on the front of our card. I have a trick to make sure this all lines up nicely. Just stick with me, it'll make sense in a few moments. I have a piece of thin paper here, thin printer paper would be great, and it's cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'm taking a frame die and I'm taping it onto that thin paper. Now I'm putting the tape so it's only on the die and the outside edge of the paper. I want to make sure that after I run this through my die cut machine, the die stays attached to that negative space, to the outside edge of the paper. The piece in the middle, I'll just throw away. So I'll run that through my die cut machine, and you can see how my die is taped to that thin paper. This will be my guide. I will hold it on the front of a piece of blue Cadet cardstock that is the same size, 4¼ by 5½ inches. And you can see how I'm lining it up. I'll run it through my die cut machine, and there we have our window cut in the front of this blue cardstock piece. I'm not going to use the little frame that the die cut, just the negative space. I will do the same thing with my Petunia cardstock. That Petunia piece is 4¼ by 5½ inches. I'll line it up with my guide, run it through, won't keep the frame or the inside, I'm just using that negative space, the outside piece. Now I have a top folding white note card that's 4¼ by 5½ inches. I will open up the card and hold my guide on the front of the card and run it through the die cut machine. This will put a window on the front of our note card. And I will do the same thing with another note card so that we can make 2 cards that will be exactly the same, just different colors. So I'll hold this onto the front of the note card, run it through my die cut machine, and now we have a window in all of these panels that lines up in the exact same spot, thanks to the guide that I made by taping the die onto that thin printer paper. Next, I have 2 pieces of acetate that are 4 by 5¼ inches, and I will tape them onto the front of the card over the window. So I'm putting double-sided tape around the window on each card, and then I will lay the acetate onto it. Now this acetate could be anything, recycled would be fine because I'm not doing any heat embossing on it. So that I'll place one on the front of one note card and one on the front of the other. So this will form the window that will show through to the inside of the card. We still have to add the shaker level, but so far we have the window on the front of our note card. At this point, I decided that I wanted the pink and blue piece to be a little bit smaller than the note card. Currently, these are 4¼ by 5½ inches wide. I want it to be a little bit smaller than that, so there will be a white trim when we add it to the note card. So I'm holding them together and cutting a thin sliver off all 4 sides. This is just an easy way to make sure I take an equal amount off all sides, and now you can see there's a little trim around the edge. On the back of the Petunia frame, I'm putting double-sided adhesive once again, and then I will lay this over our heat embossed floral acetate piece. Now my floral heat embossed acetate piece here covers up a lot of that window. You could have chose a smaller image if you wanted to, but I wanted this bold flower here. Then I can trim off any excess acetate that might be hanging off the edge. And I did the same thing with the blue frame and the other heat embossed acetate piece. Now we need to put our shaker walls on so that we can have a well to put in our little shaker bits. I'm using shaker strips from Gina Designs. These are fantastic for shaker windows. And it's a nice thickness that you can use bigger gems in it if you wanted to, and you get lots of movement. And I like that these are narrow, so they fit nicely behind frames like the one I'm doing. So I'm putting the shaker strip along all 4 sides, making sure they all touch so nothing will escape. And then I will do the same thing on the other one. So this foam tape is going on top of that acetate piece that's on the front of our note card. Now we can add whatever shaker bits we want to the inside. I chose to put some tiny little clear gemstones because I don't want something that's too distracting in there. I just want it to make some sound and have a little sparkly movement. So tiny little clear gemstones seem perfect for this. Now I can remove the release paper from the foam on one of these, and I'll actually apply liquid adhesive onto the foam tape. This is Gina Connect liquid adhesive. I'm putting a line on all the foam tape and then spreading it around with my finger. This makes the top of that foam tape covered with liquid adhesive. So when I go to put my frame, my Petunia frame on top, I have some wiggle room time. If I didn't put the liquid adhesive down, it would stick immediately when I put that frame onto the foam tape. But by covering the top of the foam tape with liquid adhesive, it gives you that wiggle room time. I'll do the same thing on this one. It makes a big difference. So I just put a line of liquid adhesive, use my finger just to rub that around, and you get a nice slick surface on top of that foam tape. It will take a few minutes for this to dry, so I'll just put something heavy on it while it does. And man, that wiggle room time makes a big difference. All right, while that dries, let's make the inside of our card. I have 2 note cards here that are top folding, 4¼ by 5½ inches, and in the top left corner of it, I'm gluing our little plaid pieces. I have a bunch of note cards of this size already pre-cut, so I just grabbed 2 of those, and I'm gluing these into the top left corner, and then I can just chop off the right-hand side and the bottom side, so there's a nice little white trim around it. And I'll do this to both. This will be a spot that I can put inside of my card that the recipient can open to see the personal message, because I didn't want that showing through the window on the front of the card. Okay, now these are dry and you can see how we have that beautiful shaker movement and the window to the inside. So I'll glue our note card into the inside, and now that pink foil piece will show through to the front of the card. Now I have the little white frames, that the frame die that I used cut, and I'm going to glue that right into our opening onto the acetate. It gives it a nice clean look. And then I will do the same thing on the inside of the card. So I'll open this up, and on the back of our window I'll place it there, again just for a clean look. And that frame die, again, is from Simon Says Stamp. You could just use a rectangle die there and skip the frame. I just like that little trim. I thought it gave a nice finished look. And I did that to both of the cards. For sentiment, I considered a few things. I could use one from the Beautiful Things stamp set that the floral came from, or I considered using this Faithful Encouragement stamp set. This is another one that's new with beautiful sentiments that are wonderful for providing comfort and letting someone know that you're there for them. I encourage you to look at this set. It's beautiful. I chose not to use it today because I wanted something a bit bigger, but I wanted to share it with you. I opted to go with Elegant Thoughts, which is a much older product from Gina K. There's a stamp set, a coordinating die set, and a coordinating Polyglaze set, so you can use these mix and matched. I'm using the Polyglaze again, so these will coordinate with the die. I cut out one of the Polyglaze sentiments, I'll put it into the carrier sheet, and I'm using some of the leftover foil that we have from earlier in the video. I'll run that through my fuse machine, and then we end up with this perfect, intricate sentiment that I love so much. And the best part is the coordinating die that works with the stamp set also works with this. Now the negative piece here, we're going to use that. I'm putting it onto a piece of white Polyglaze. This is just some scraps of white Polyglaze. I'll put that behind the blue foil, the negative space blue foil, and run that through our die cut machine. This will give us a reverse sentiment. By the way, when you use Polyglaze, make sure your foil covers all of that Polyglaze surface because it's coated with Polyglaze over there on the right, and you don't want it to get stuck to the inside of your carrier sheet. After foiling both, I use the coordinating dies to cut them out. And look at what we end up with. We end up with two sentiments, one that is the reverse of the other. I'll use one on the front of the card and one on the inside of the card. I also did this same technique using the Dusty Rose foil along with the Hello Friend Polyglaze for our pink card. Now I'm gluing the one sentiment onto the front of the card, and then the other will go on the inside. Now these sentiments look like they're lost a bit inside of all of that heat embossing, but really in real life, that sentiment has some shine to it, so it catches the light nicely and stands out. Now to get the sentiment on the inside, lined up with the one on the outside, I'm putting glue on the back of the reverse foil image. I'm laying it on top of the window, lining it up through the window. Adhesive is facing up towards the camera. Then I'll close my card onto it, and that will grab the sentiment on the inside, and I know it'll be lined up with the sentiment on the outside. So when you peek through the closed card, you don't see the sentiment on the inside. I love all the shine inside of the card. So I'll do the same thing to the other. Liquid adhesive on the back of the reverse sentiment. I'll line it up here on the window, close my card onto it to grab that sentiment, and now my sentiment is lined up on the front and insides of the card. So here are the two completed cards. There's lots of movement in there. It's hard to see the sparkle in real life, but you can also hear it. And you can see that foil shining from within. You could use pattern papers on the inside if you prefer. Really, the sky is the limit. If you wanted more of the inside to show through the window, I could have used the smaller floral image, and that would have left more of the inside showing through. It's nice that this type of technique works with a variety of products you already have on hand, but I am loving these from Gina K Designs. By the way, Gina K offers free gifts at $75 or more, and you get to pick what the gift is from a few selections. I will have the information about that in my YouTube description below, and I believe you get free US shipping on orders of $50 or more. I thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you enjoyed this technique and give it a try. Window shaker cards are really fun and so different than store-bought. If you're interested in what I've used, it's linked below in my YouTube description. At the end here, I'll link to a couple other related videos if you're looking for more ideas. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you soon.